We are speaking with Christina Kirk, author of A House Divided. So first, just tell us, what is the central story of A House Divided?
Well, the play takes place in December of 1863, and the whole premise is that Mary Todd Lincoln's half-sister, Emily Todd Lincoln, who happens to be a fiercely loyal Confederate, comes to visit the White House. And as you can imagine, some sparks fly. So the premise that leads up to this is that, and this happened in history, Emily Todd was stopped at Fort Monroe when she was trying to return to Kentucky. And the soldier said, well, in order to pass, you must swear your allegiance to the Union. And she refused. Now, part of the reason she did that, in addition to being on the Confederate side, was she had just lost her Confederate general soldier husband in battle. So she felt a fierce loyalty to him as well. And so she refused. And there's these soldiers knowing, okay, this is the sister of the First Lady. What do we do? So they send a telegram to Lincoln. And Lincoln famously sends back a telegram saying, send her to me.
Wow.
And then what happens is that Emily and her 6-year-old daughter, Catherine, show up at the White House. So the play is about what happens when this Confederate sister is there at the White House. And at that time in history, we're talking about a moment where nothing is for sure and certain for Lincoln. He doesn't even know if he's going to be elected for a second term. There are factions within his own party who are fighting against him. He also doesn't know what's going to happen with the war. There are serious setbacks, so he's not sure of that. He doesn't know if he can save the Union. So all of that is transpiring in this 1 week in December.
It's a fascinating moment in history.
It really is.
What made you think how this story should be told is on stage in a play?
Well, I think that what made me think it could be a compelling play was I kept hearing in little bites of history that, oh yeah, and then there was this 1 week where Emily Todd Lincoln came. And I thought, what happened? What happened during that week? So I thought, this could be a great stage play. This is the kind of thing that makes for good theater, we hope, right? And I also thought, this is very timely. People are on different sides of issues. The stories of saying, oh, gee, I barely got through that Thanksgiving dinner, So I thought, this is the time to write a play about this topic. And there's a lot of the pieces of the history that haven't been filled in. So there's a place for a playwright to come in and imagine, okay, what was that dinner table conversation really like? What was breakfast the next morning like? So those are the kinds of things that I thought would be interesting to put, that were stage worthy,
So inside all of that, what do you think what is the central question for you?
I think the central question of this play is really about what happens in that painful moment when you don't live up to your own standards. How do you react to that? Do we condemn ourselves? Do we condemn others? Or do we have the capacity to recognize that we're all just human and we have to cope? So, so often when we think about Lincoln, we think about this iconographic, legendary figure. Everybody knows Lincoln, everybody reveres Lincoln. And I kind of wanted to take him off the pedestal, not because I don't admire him, and I think people will walk away admiring him after the play, but I think it's really important to recognize that this was just a man who had a family, who had his own vulnerabilities, and part of what he is confronting is, how do I make these choices? And what will it mean for the country and for my family? And so that, I think, is centrally what is at its core.
Major stakes.
Oh yeah,
major stakes. If good drama is high stakes,
yes.
Those are the highest stakes, right?
Yeah, everything is at stake for this man.
There's obviously a lot of parallels to today. I mean, You already spoke about sitting around the Thanksgiving dinner table, right. And we relate to that. How, for you, do you think about the parallels between the world of the play and the world we live in now?
Well, as you can imagine, I've done a lot of reading.
Sure.
The process started by doing a lot of historical research, and one of the historians I admire so much is Heather Cox Richardson, and she talks a lot about the parallels between the 1850s and 1860s. and our current day. And some of the things she talks about is that at that time you had this faction of the wealthy elite, basically the elite enslavers, and then you had the people that were working for them and or were enslaved by them. And what she thought was very interesting and compelling was that Lincoln comes along and says, okay, how do we look at this? Because there was a particular moment in history where it looked like that elite faction was going to take over. They had the wealth, they had the power, they had the momentum, but that wakes some people up. And one of those people that got woken up, because Lincoln had been kind of out of the political scene, and then he said, wait a second, what's happening to our country? And so he got involved, and I love what Richardson says about this, because she talks about the fact that instead of looking to the Constitution, which of course the enslavers were because they liked what it says about property, and at the time, those who were enslaved were considered property.
Right.
So they said, hey, the Constitution is protecting our right to have these people. And Lincoln said, well, let's not look at the Constitution. Let's look toward the Declaration of Independence. And when he did that, that's when he did his famous Gettysburg Address, which takes place less than a month before our play. So, but in that address, he says, let's look to the Declaration of Independence, where all are created equal. And that was a profound moment for our country. And that really turned the tide. And so I think that kind of parallel is really, really interesting. And of course, I'm excited about this upcoming panel and lecture series that's coming up at the Lead Center. It's October 9th.
October 9th, the panel is in the afternoon, and then there's a lecture in the evening, kind of diving into all these issues, both kind of the macro political issues, but also I think it's so interesting on a micro level, just Emily and Mary as sisters on two sides of a political but also very personal issue that I think is very obviously applicable to lots of families now.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're bringing that up, because one of the things that's central to this play is that these are two sisters who were both mourning for many lost family members. Both of them have lost brothers in the war. Mary is still grieving for the loss of her son, and of course Emily is freshly grieving for the loss of her husband. And they want to be together to grieve together. And part of what brings Mary great comfort is when Emily comes, and Lincoln is so grateful because she needs her sister. And then that tension is still there. Emily describes it as a barrier of granite that separates the two sisters. And so it's heartbreaking, really.
So within all of that, what do you hope people take away when they come to see A House Divided?
You know, at its heart, I really think this play is about what happens to us when our political convictions divide us and what that costs us. And I hope that people find that the people on stage are people they can relate to, and that maybe the play will make us think more about what unites us.
Well, thank you so much. A House Divided is at the Lead Center in September. All of the details are at leadcenter.org.